So I'll introduce myself. Jeff Morris. I'm a state representative from the 40th district, which is this district here. And the district basically runs from, it's basically half of Whatcom County, the south half, the western cities in Skagit County, then all of San Juan County. And I've been fortunate enough to represent this area actually since 1997. And currently I'm the Speaker Pro Tem in the House of Representatives, which is kind of like being Vice President down there. But basically I preside 70% of the time on the House floor when we're in session, and then I'm part of our key leadership group in the House that, basically my responsibilities, the floor leaders report to me, and we decide what's coming out on the floor when, and some other stuff like that. But it's basically a lot of institutional responsibility. Before that, I used to chair the Technology, Energy, and Communications Committee in the House for about 7 years. It was really a tough decision to give that up because that's really where my passion is, as far as my personal interest goes. And what was great is having a district like this one, actually, where people kind of cared about energy and where we're going in technology, and actually gave me the latitude to work on issues that, frankly, are really politically boring and don't actually get you, many headlines in the paper. I mean, I found if I wanted to calm a mean Rotary Club down or Kiwanis Club, I had to talk about energy policy for about 15 minutes. I could put everybody to sleep pretty quickly. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the state's been trying to do and what I've been trying to do to promote what I would call more distributed generation, but it's actually more self-generation of energy. And a lot of people aren't really familiar with what we've done in that area because, again, it's not a really sexy issue, and newspapers don't want to spend time writing about things that don't sell ads. Some of this you may be aware of, some of it you may not. I'm going to kind of go through what I consider to be some of the progressive energy policies we've adopted here to allow more self-sufficiency when it comes to your energy use and to promote more reasonable life cycle cost. And so I'm going to go through and I'm going to kind of blow through a lot of stuff really quickly. I would encourage you to interrupt me if you have any questions, or if I'm getting too boring or too in-depth, you can say we don't really care about that, and I'll just kind of move on to the next topic. But I'm going to talk about some of the things we've been trying to do in the state. I'm going to talk about some of the regional energy challenges that we're trying to grapple with as a region. But my background is, 2 years ago I left a job where I worked at the Washington Technology Center outside the legislature, and I used to help new energy companies commercialize their intellectual property, so it's actually a product, and I still am involved in that space a little bit. Currently I oversee a regional project that the U.S. Department of Energy and some other folks have funded, where I'm looking 15 years into the future for the region and trying to identify hiccups or challenges that we're going to face collectively. One of the things that tends to happen in the energy sector is there's a lot of stovepipe planning where each utility looks at their service territory, but there's not a lot of talk between them about what they're doing. The region doesn't communicate well within itself because it's broken up into subregions. The natural gas guys don't talk to the electricity guys, and they both make decisions that impact each other. Each state tends to pass its own laws, and that's what we call boutique standards. And when they don't line up, it makes it more challenging to push some of these new technologies out because they have to do different things in each different jurisdiction they roll into. So with that, the three areas I'm going to talk about are what the state's done to promote the renewable energy industry, what we've done in the alternative fuel area, and then also to improve energy efficiency standards. And I'm going to go through pretty quick, and anything you want more discussion, have a question, just interrupt me. We've passed a lot of policies in the renewable area, in particularly the past 8 years. Everything from your standard tax breaks, this was a big fight we actually had this last session because I originally worked on that when I was first elected, and we do a thing called sunsetting of most of our laws now. So when we pass a law, we don't just let it stay on the books forever. We usually have it actually retire, and that gives us a chance to make sure that the policies actually were working. And the reason we do that is that if you don't do that, it becomes an entitlement over time. And so we've got like tax breaks for the hops and mint industry that were passed by our state back in 1931. And we grow like 85% of the hops and mint in the North American marketplace now. So you could say that policy has been successful, but do they still need the tax break you know, and to support it. So that's why we do that. And one of the things in this area that I particularly fought for is that because we had a bit of a funding crisis going on in Olympia this year, there was a push not to have a 100% sales tax break. And one of the things that I got in the language is that particularly for solar, for systems that are 10 kilowatts or less, which are typically the size you'd see go on to commercial buildings in your home, there actually is a 100% tax break for that, because that's a competition issue. You know, there's a lot of installers here in the islands in particular that, you know, if you're buying a $25,000 solar system for your house, you know, that sales tax break, you can order those panels online from somebody in Oregon just as easy as you can from buying them through a local vendor here, who's actually putting it on your roof. So I got the 100% up so that there wouldn't be a tax advantage to buy the panels from Oregon versus Washington State. One of the things we've really tried to do, and this is, it's always the little things that make the biggest difference. So you think about these huge policies, cap and trade, carbon tax and stuff. In the end, it's always the smallest things that are the biggest barriers to some of these new technologies actually reaching your house. And a lot of it's around permitting. I still have people that I work with in the private sector that are putting you know, solar systems on schools, and they go into a city that's never seen one before, and the city wants to do a 6-month moratorium on solar projects until they can do their own weight load studies about how many panels you can put on a roof, you know, a steel truss roof. That's a barrier. You know, people are willing to spend the money. They don't want to wait 6 months until someone's done studies that have been done since the 70s about, you know, how much weight you can put on a particular type of architecture of house. So we've been trying to do a lot of state standards around expedited permitting for wind farms and other renewable energy projects. There's always a lot of pushback from the local governments because they think it's us trying to take their authority away. But the reality is a lot of local governments don't have experts in a fuel cell and you know, in a residential sized wind turbine, and so it's better to have standards that you know, nationally recognized, internationally recognized groups that develop as being the safest standards be put in place. We were one of the first states to promote fuel cell use through a tax incentive and state procurement policy. We did that back in 2001. We also have a tax break for solar cell manufacturers, although we haven't been successful in actually getting a manufacturer here, except for, I'm blanking out their name, but the Outback subsidiary down in Arlington is going to hopefully start producing panels here in the fall. They're waiting to get their UL certification for their panels, but they'll be starting manufacturing here hopefully this year. You know, the solar production credit is probably one of the biggest things we did in the state, I have a small solar system in my house, so I get to take advantage of this too, but you can get up to 85 cents per kilowatt hour for every kilowatt hour you produce on top of the net metering you get back from the utilities. So I'm a Puget customer, and because there's not a inverter or a panel manufacturer in Washington State, I don't get that 85-cent break that if you used a Washington State produced product you would get. I get 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which is the minimum you can get, because I've got a German inverter, because that's the only one that made it for the size of my system, and I've got panels that were made in the US, but they weren't not made in Washington State. Plus the net metering, I'm getting about 21 cents per kilowatt hour payback back on my system. We're looking at changing this next session, and we very much want to go to, and I want to go to what we call a production, a feed-in tariff. And we're talking about doing away with that production tax credit and just we're going to mandate that the utilities, if you put a solar system or a wind turbine or whatever, a fuel cell in your place, we're going to probably have a feed-in tariff that's probably going to be about $1.20 a kilowatt hour, which is a substantial raise in the price and will shorten down that payback period of your investment.
Would it be linked to manufacture, where it was manufactured at all?
There might be a push for that, but I'm going to try just to have a straight feed-in tariff. I mean, Germany, that's what Germany's done with their solar system. I can't remember the exact numbers, so don't hold me to this, but I think like 20% of all electricity produced in Germany is from solar systems now, and their sun regiment is less than what it is in Seattle.
Wow.
They have less sun than what they have in Seattle on an annual basis, and 20% of all their electricity is coming from solar because they've had this feed-in tariff where you get a premium for producing that type of energy. So my goal is not to have it linked to in-state production.
Yeah, good.
This interconnection standard issue, again, is just a huge barrier. It's something that I personally fought for